Happy Kansas Day. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You know, I love talking about Kansas. Born and raised in Junction City, Kansas. Yes, indeed. We always call it Junktown, but I won't get into that. But Kansas is a great, great, great place to grow up. And a lot of what I'm going to say, I want to really kind of speak to the young people here today, because Kansas really kind of made me who I am. And a few years ago, the Topeka Library did my genealogy. I didn't know much about my history, my family's history. And they did my genealogy, and I found out that who my first relative was that came to Kansas. And his name was Oscar Haskins, and he was a former slave who grew up around the Mississippi-Georgia border. And during the Civil War, a guy could, if he didn't want to fight, he could sell his spot to someone. And so someone sold his spot to Oscar, and he fought in the Civil War. And with the money he got from fighting in the Civil War, he started, after the Civil War, he started his family and did pretty well in the area, down there in Mississippi and Georgia. But then the Klan came in, right after the emancipation, during Reconstruction. And the Klan came in, that's the KKK. And they came in, and Oscar was a minister, and he was probably talking the way I'm talking right now. And they ran him out of the South. And he came to Junction City. Now, why would he come to Junction City? And I think when you come to the visitor center here, and when you walk through, and you see all these photographs of our history, and one of the big ones you see, just like the mural upstairs, is of John Brown. And John Brown and Harriet Tubman were the only people in America freeing slaves. And John Brown's connection, and I love to see how he's so honored in the Capitol here, because John Brown is a true American hero. And the first screenplay I sold to 20th Century Fox was about John Brown and a slave that was hung with him his name was Shields Green. And when I was, we were talking earlier about how it is when you struggle to be in the arts. And most likely you're poor, So I had 5 kids struggling before I started working at KU. And I sold a screenplay to 20th Century Fox for $750,000. Yeah. I was the last slave John Brown freed. Yes, I was. And the thing about that sale was that when I graduated from NYU, everyone said to me, "So where are you going, man? You going to New York? Or you going to LA?" And I said, "I'm going back to Kansas." And they said, "What is wrong with this dude? How are you going to be in the film industry from Kansas? That doesn't work. It's LA or New York." And I knew because I knew I would go back to Kansas because of why my father had succeeded in Junction City and how Oscar had succeeded in Junction City. Kansans gave both of them the space to be themselves. They gave them a safe space to succeed. They gave them the space surrounded by neighbors, people who really respected community, who understood community, who understood the value of hard work. And my father, he built our house in Junction City and never borrowed any money from the bank, which is amazing when you think about it. He was a construction worker, and him and his friends built our house that we grew up in. Just built it. It took them, I'm sure, a long time. The first film I made, it took me 9 years to make that film. And I had no money, and I did it a little bit at a time. And that allowed me to finally make a feature film, and that launched my career. And when students would ask me, how'd you get into Hollywood? It's like, I got into Hollywood because I came back to Kansas and I surrounded myself just as my father did and just as Oscar did, with friends, with a community, with people who understood what I was trying to achieve, and they helped me to raise, we were like the Amish, we raised this barn, right? And that's the thing that Kansas has that I think no other place has. And I think about people like William Allen White, the great journalist from Emporia, Kansas. And he was able to stay here as well and succeed. And one of the things he did, he ran for governor not to win, but to run the Klan out of Kansas, to run the KKK out of Kansas. And that's what he did. He helped to remain us a free state. In our motto, through the stars, to the stars with difficulties. When Kansas was being founded, the other states were seceding. People don't understand that. The other states were literally leaving the United States as Kansas was being founded. And we had to fight Missouri to remain a free state. That's the difficulties that they're talking about in our motto. And when you look at the difficulties we're facing today, you have to say to yourself, like James Reed from Wichita, Kansas, who died with Dr. Martin Luther King at the Selma March. When you look at James Reed and you see how Dr. King had to rely on the federal government, often to go into places, oftentimes surrounded by a mob trying to kill him. And he would call up the Kennedys and he would say, I'm surrounded by a mob, can you send someone to help me? They're getting ready to kill us. And the Kennedys would send troops there to rescue them. Now that relationship is kind of reversed. Now the states are protecting folks who are looking for civil rights, and the federal government is not protecting us. And so we have to look at our history. This clearly this part of Kansas where the states and the government could work together to make things obviously better in this country. But they have to decide on one thing. They have to decide on brotherhood and sisterhood and respect for others, respect for immigrants, and the true American values that we all hold dear. And I'll just close by saying this. Through these difficulties we're in today, if we look to Kansas, in the example we give here, we will just follow the stars and find our way. Thank you very much.